that are here? Good. All right. Well, tonight we're going to be we're starting week 4 tonight, and we're going to be going over a member site in class on, I'll show you on the overhead if you want to look real quick. We'll be able to log into a website with credentials. And once you log in, be able to have access to menus, like say a members page. When you log out, if you were to try to click on a members page, after it redirects here and goes back to the home page, if I was trying to click on this members page, it's going to redirect always back to index. So we're going to show you tonight quickly how to secure any website with a couple lines of code actually in PHP. We'll use the same config file we used last week for our guest book to do the lab. And then, but first of all, I want to show you, I emailed everybody this week in announcements. I believe I emailed you as well. Gentleman that is a developer of PHP has a tool I've used for a while, and he's opened it up actually for any other developers to use in education for free, and it's called ShiftEditnet. Just a recommendation, you don't have to use it, but I'm going to show you how to use it tonight real quick. You can register with your .edu email address, and once you register for that account, you get up to 5 projects, meaning 5 external websites you can connect via FTP and then play with it. So if you look on the overhead, I've already logged into mine real quick. This is on 00 web host. If you notice on the overhead, I'll go ahead and go into like this week, week 4, and expand it. So I'm literally working on the external site locally using ShiftEditnet home. Once I log in, I can now click on any of the files. So I'll click on my index page here. It'll open it up, you'll notice, right in to an actual editable screen where I can edit this from any web browser. I'm actually going here, can edit HTML, PHP. And so this one actually has in there setting the default time from good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time of day it currently is in that location when they load this page. And so any changes you make to the site, you're making it live. You can also, over here on the right, you have the ability to upload files just by right-clicking, just like you would in any type of directory. I can upload a file, upload a folder. So if you guys create a folder week by week, you can just upload the whole folder in this process. It works great. And so let me quickly show you how to set this up. I'm actually going to wipe out this site. I'm going to delete it on purpose to show you how easy it is. I'm deleting this site, and I'm going to go ahead and go back. Let me edit that. There we go. So once you go ahead and create a site on this, I'll go ahead and create a new one to show you. It gives you FTP information. What I did was I logged into 00 web host, went to the control panel in 00 web host. So let me go back to the actual control panel page. All right, so when you guys log in, you're familiar with this page, right? Where you log in and you see the actual control panel site. Let's see if I can log in here quicker. And so you just click on the Go to See panel. You'll scroll down to your credential information for FTP. I would recommend setting the FTP password initially, unless you have written it down already. It's got to be different password than your account password for 00 web host. Once you have that, keep that up on your screen, and it has in here Your FTP host information, mine's web290.comoj.com. There's my username. Password start out, but I know that hopefully. If I don't, I can reset it. Folder to upload, public HTML, underscore HTML is the root folder for 00 web host. You can click this link to change your password. And with this tool that I'm showing you, you actually don't need Smart FTP or FileZilla because you can remotely control it from any web browser. It even works on an iPad and iPhone because I use it all the time. And so it works great on using Chrome on an iPad or iPhone. And so I'm going to go back to ShiftEd, and I'm going to put in here a unique name for my site. So I'll go ahead and I've already created a couple already. So I'll do a web 245. I'll do fall 2013. FTP is a type, we'll leave it at that. Then I'll go ahead and copy my host information. So it's not going to be localhost, it's actually going to be the host information on 00 web host. Copy my username, paste it, type in my password, and then the directory, it's public underscore HTML, or you can copy and paste it if you want. I always test the connection here. I might have typed the password in wrong or something. I'll have to retype it if I do, or put something in there wrong, which that happens. And the internet starts slow here tonight, so no biggie. Like that all the time. Come on. Wow. Okay. I'm patient. I'm going to refresh that. Make it kind of stick in a loop there. I'm gonna go back. See if it had that. Okay, it didn't create it good. I'll create a new site. Paste the directory. I'm going to hit save this time. I'm not going to try to test it. It took too long. Okay, so there we are. Successfully logged in now to the site. And then from this, I can actually create whatever folder. If you have something locally, you can upload it. Or you can create on the fly as well. So you could actually come in here and create a folder for test or something, which I do a lot. I can come here and create a new folder. I can call it test on the live side. Make sure it's not taken yet. Tester. So I've got my site in here. Now I'm going to right click on the tester folder and create a brand new PHP file. I'm going to name it index. Now it's opening it up by just double clicking on it. and puts in there your beginning and ending tag for you, and you can begin coding your PHP page. Pretty cool, right? Totally built in. Shift, and just follow the link on the announcement, ShiftEditnet, and when you register for it, use your .edu email address, and he told me that when you do, you get up to 5. You get 5 accounts, basically 5 websites you can connect to it remotely. So you can use it for this site and exclusively if you want to. You don't have to FTP. You can basically just build it on the fly or upload it from your local development. They have added a new feature I haven't had time to play with, is the setting up a local directory. Over here in the viewing, you can set up a local directory, which I don't have set up on mine. So I haven't used that feature. That's new. So anyway, avail yourself to that. ShiftEditnet. So tonight we're going to go over the in-class exercise on a CMS example. We'll discuss some content on sessions and forms and go over some chapter 2 content with rocks. By the way, I have rocks up here on the overhead. It's the PDF file that you guys don't have to purchase a book, remember. You can just download the PDF from inside of our course conference. It's actually the very top conference. You were supposed to download it for week 1, but if you didn't, it's inside of course documents, PHP textbooks. And the link is underneath the, I think I put in parentheses, rocks textbook. That's the one, that's the PDF file for chapter 2, which goes over arrays. On the homework for this week, let's go look at that real quick. This is actually verbatim from the book, but I threw in there a different challenge for you. This is just showing you how to create arrays in PHP and then populate them. In this case, it's an array 0, 1, and 2. 0 is blue raspberry, 2 is pineapple, 0 is blue raspberry, 1 is pineapple, 2 is root beer, and then displaying them out in an echo command. What I want you to do is get that example to work, but modify it and add an array of your own for a movie called movie, and then have 5 titles of your favorite movie show up in the array. Okay? And you can do any movies that you like. Put them in there. And that's on page 83, and rocks is actually where you'll find the, and you'll notice here, if you load the PDF, the thumbnails here says 82, but it's actually 61. So you have to kind of find out where 80, it's actually the correct page number, but it's not going to be on the thumbnail. Let's see what that is. Page 83. All right. Page 83 on arrays. That's not it. That's chapter 2. Yeah, it is. Okay, it is. I was right. On your movie website, you're going to write a file. It talks about here on the arrays, chapter 2, exercise 3. Write a program that displays a different message in the morning, time of day, for example, in the morning, good morning, in the afternoon, and like I showed you that earlier. That one's actually the wrong one. I didn't show you the right one then. That one is incorrectamundo. So let me edit that. I was looking at a movie array. My bad. Get rid of that. That's not for this week. Helps look at the example, which is a wrong example. I think it's actually go to my home real quick. Should be the time one I showed you earlier. Nope. Yeah. Let's see here. I have it correct here on this one. I will find it. Well, that's the wrong example. Let's see if the zip file is correct. I think it's incorrect as well. All right. Let me go to my local host here. That should be the time one for this week. The date and time. Yeah. So let's pull it up this way. And I will upload the correct one for you guys on the project source. There it is right there. Okay, let me upload that one because I got the wrong one. Let me compress that one for you and I'll put it up there. I'll make sure I have the right source for you. Okay, let me edit that link. And that's the wrong example. There we go. Okay, now you'll have the right one up here. Okay, so now you have the right one on there, which is the time one. So let's look at the time one, which I do have that on my local host. We'll watch it there, and we'll talk about it before we do the in-class. Okay, because you guys, one of the discussion questions last week was on timing, setting time, the now time I believe it was. And this one's actually just using the local time for the user, whatever that time is, Central, Pacific, whatever, and it uses that time to give you a different message. Projects, week 4. Web 290 projects, week 4. Okay. Web 290 projects. That might be why. Let me open up the time one here. I think I have to call the time.php, probably. Yeah, okay, that's what I have to do. So in week 4, time.php, there we go, good evening. That's the message. And the text for that, let's go to that real quick. The code is fairly simple on that, but it does use the UDT time of the local computer, whatever that computer is at that time, the server actually that the computer is hosted on. All right, so on this one, let me blow up the text for us so we can look at it. There we go. So on this one, it's using the default time available on the server that this is hosted on, wherever it might be. So if it's in Chicago, it's going to be using Central. If it's in East Coast, it's going to be using Eastern. West Coast, going to use Pacific. And so you've got basically here setting the default time with this one line of code. You can set the default time to that time zone. All right, so you can override wherever the server is located at with this one line of code the different time sets. Now to find out all the different ones that are available, you can actually, the easiest way is just do a Google search, because there's actually tons of websites that show you that as far as examples of the different ones that you can put in there. And it goes right to the PHP.net manual, the very first link, and gives you all the identifiers, gives you, like in this example, here's America, Los Angeles. And then it goes all the different time zones available to you, also the list of supported time zones are given. So when you click on these given time zones, like say if we want to do Asia, it'll actually give you all the demarcations for Asia. So if you put whatever in that time zone line of code, it's going to force that time zone to be that default time zone for that app. Does that make sense? And so in this case, it's American Chicago. The current time, it's going to take and force it here to that current time with date G. Date G is just basically the now time for the current time in Chicago. If the current time is greater than or equal to 5 and the current time is less than or equal to 12, it's going to be good morning. So between 5 a.m. and noon, good morning. Between 1 and then 17, which is going to be, this is in a 24-hour period. So this would be, let's see, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 5. So this would be 1 to 5, good afternoon. And then 6 to 11, good evening. All right? And it's going to display whatever message accordingly, according to that time zone that they're currently at. It will be using, you can fake it out by messing with your computer time on your computer and faking it out for that unique area. Try that. So if I go in here and say I want to change the time zone or the time we're at currently right now, on a Mac here I can change it easily to something else. Say I want to change it to morning. I'll have to override this automatic. Change it to morning. Save it. Now I'll go back to my browser, make sure I'm at that time, 6:57. I'll have to reconnect. Good morning. Okay, so you can fake it out when you're testing it by just changing your time on your computer to make sure it's working on your script. So the script is not real difficult on this one. If you want to play around with code on this one as far as challenging you is maybe give wider ranges of messages, maybe add 2 or 3 more, limit the time zone a little bit, more limited, more expanded time zone ranges. So right now it's got only 3, but if you want to add 2 or 3 more, that's fine. If you wanted to play with different time zone as well, I'll let you do that. If you want to change American Chicago to something else, that's fine. Just kind of play around with it. All right. So that's the take home, real simple. And if you are going to use that tool I told you to use, I'd like to get some feedback on your guys' usability anyway of the ShiftEditnet outside of campus. It's real slow here on campus like everything else, but if you could maybe use this outside of campus, anybody going to use this or try maybe? Try to use this ShiftEditnet? Cool. If you could let me know, that'd be great, what you think of it. That'd be perfect. Okay, now if you'll do me a favor here, we're going to shift and go do some reading, but before we do that, I'm going to have you download a file in week 4 lab. We're going to go over. If you go into the practice lab for week 4, there's a zip file on the source link. Download that. Once you download that, it should give it in it's quite a few files actually. It looks like it's 4, 8, 12 files for this one. And so we'll go over those. It also has a config file. We're going to use the same config file we did last week on the members guest book. And this file that has you download, I believe, has my credentials in it, if I'm not mistaken, which is cconcle, I believe, for everything. And so you need to change that for your credentials. Let's see what I've got on this one here. Inside of there, I've got localhost cconcle. So you guys will need to change yours toward your DB name from last week, which I believe I had you do the same mnemonics, which was first initial last name. Is that right? For your database, so we'll use the same database connection for last week. If you were not here, let me show you quickly while those are changing theirs. In the root of XAMPP, if you just go to the local host with XAMPP running, what we did last week, we did the PHP myadmin and created a new database or new user with a database, and the username is your first initial last name and database same name. So if you weren't here last week, the podcast is in there for last week. If you didn't watch it all, it's in there. And so you'll notice on my PHP myadmin for my local host, I've got quite a few tables in my database for cconcle on the local development site here. And so what I'm going to do is, while you're downloading that, I'm going to actually go over pertinent information as it refers to what we're going to be going over, which is sessions I want to go over and forms for the reading. And so inside of week 4, there's a couple reading examples I want to go over, just some, just for examples. Forms and sessions, those two. So let's go over that. Here's forms. And then sessions I'm going to go over. And then we'll go over the in-class exercise line by line, and then we'll be done. So forms. We've already went over passing references by URL, where basically remember you put the question mark, equals, and the variable name and the value. Tonight we're actually going to take it a little bit further and talk about session variables. Session variables actually allow you to carry a session from one form to the next form easily. And so that's what we're going to go over tonight. Forms work in PHP like they do in HTML. The difference is they have a post command generally in forms in PHP where you're posting it to another page with, and then when you get to that page, it's going to have form data from that form that you're sending it from. So it'll have like first name, last name, email, whatever's on that form will be sent to another form to be processed. How it works is a user requests a particular URL. The XML page, HTML page supplies a web form. The user fills a form out. Another URL is requested, and the form data is sent to the page either in that URL or as a separate piece of data. And then the response is made. So we have form action, the path to the page. Could be a get command, could be a post command. In this example here, it's a get command. The action is a page that the form should be submitted to. The method is a method by which it should be submitted. And the options are two, get or post. If it's get, the data is passed in the URL itself. And we've used get information for getting information on a pass by reference. Question mark equals, variable name, whatever. Pass by reference. Remember, use the get command on that very first line, getting the data from the URL. Same thing here. It's getting the data from the URL, putting it into a form. The method is, and the data is passed in the URL string. If the method is post, it's passed as a separate file, and those files are brought over to the next page using a post command. So you have a variable name, fname equals, post, in parentheses, the actual name that's on the form, the name for the field. So field names are types, and field names have names. So field name text with name fname, field name text, input text, name lname. Make sense? And then you can have radial buttons, you can have text areas, a whole bunch of different types of form types you can have. So we have here an example of a form field text input with form tags for a single form. In this example, it's first name is what the user will see. It's a text type. And the name brought over in the post command is going to be first name, brought over in the post command page. Form tags, these are important. Name, it's the name of the field. So that's going to have to correspond with the post on the form you're going to be sending it to. You'll use this name in PHP to access the data on that membership or the guestbook page we did last week, the guestbook form. We used that last week in that example. ID equal is a label reference string. This should be the same as referenced in the label tag. This is just really the type it is. It's a label, it's a text, whatever. Size equal is a length of displayed in the text box. How many characters can be displayed in the text box. On this form, the one I want you to recommend, or one I want you to remember, the most important one of this whole bunch is the name, because that's the one being brought up by the post. So make sure you pay attention to your name creation on forms in a post creation form. You're going to use a starred text to include password type of information. So for that one, you actually would put in label for PW, password is what showed up, and then the input type is password, name is PASSWD, and the ID PW, and the size 20. So when users typed in information in this field, it would be asterisk as they typed it in, basically going across the screen for password fields. And then also you have like label description fields where you can add more columns. An example is over here on the right of the screen where it says default text goes here. This would be like text area. You might have heard of that in HTML. Same deal. This is called description. And it actually has a text area tag inside of this description, which gives you multiple columns and rows. Name on this one as well. Drop-down forms is another type of field you could have in a form. Where do you live? It's a name on this one would be town, ID, TN. The most important thing on a post is going to be what? Out of those two, between name and ID, what are we going to use on the post side? Name. So that's the most important part. In fact, a lot of times you can leave out that ID. I don't use ID a lot in forms because I just don't use it. And so you don't have to have it in there. Option values. These are the values the user is going to see when they drop down. You got in this one Swindon, London, And London is different than Swindon in that it's the one that's going to be selected when the user comes to the form initially. Okay, so you just put the word selected after value and in quotes the word selected, and it's going to select that selection for that drop down. And then the last one is Bristol. So you got Swindon, London, Bristol, with London being the one selected. And the name on this one's town. So I went over that already. Radio button. Radio button, this one is a radio button type. The name on this one's age, ID, U30. Checked is the default, meaning it's going to be checked. The age one here, under 30, is going to be checked. The value is going to be under 30, and the label that the user will actually see for this radio button will be under 30. The next one is a radio button as well. Age is the name. You'll notice on this one, the names for the radio button are both the same because only one radio button can be selected at a time, all right, for radio buttons. You can use checkboxes for multiple selections on forms, but radio buttons, only one can be selected. And that's pretty much the same in all programming logic. And so this one has, on the second one, radio type, name, age again, but this one, the value is 30 to 40, and the text the user sees is 30 to 40. Going on for the next one, name, we already talked about that, and the value being checked. Colors, this is checkbox. Checkbox, you can have multiples. So the input type on this one is color or is checkbox. And notice the name on this one is a color array with brackets. It has a left and right bracket. The first one is red. The second one is blue. The difference between the two is the first one is checked, which is red. The second one is not checked, which is blue. It's the only difference. The name property, though, because you can have multiples, that's why it has to be an array, okay? Because you can have multiples. They could check red and blue, so it'd be brought over as the array name color. 0 would be red, 1 would be blue, brought over into the post command. The other type of field, I believe we used this last week on the edit link for the message board, if I'm not mistaken. It had on there a message, which was, I believe, the user's message, first, last name, and then it had edit. Okay. The edit link had in it the ID field of the record, ID whatever, ID 1, ID 2, 3, whatever it was. And that was the actual reference for that field, the unique field name. So anytime you have a unique field record IDs, it's not going to hurt for people to see it in essence, but you don't really need to see it on the form. You can have it in the form but be hidden, which we used in the edit one, in the edit example. Because I believe visually you would see on that one for the message last week, it was first name, last name or whatever, and then you didn't see ID, but you did see the edit link where they could click on that and go back to the form to edit that record. For that one, all you do is type hidden. That's all you need to remember. And then the name, hidden underscore value. That one's just a name they threw in there. The most important part for this one, if it's hidden, it has to be type hidden. Next is the submit button itself. All it does is submit what you put in that post or get command for the form. Field sets I'm not going to go over because they aren't used much anymore. This is important. In PHP, the form variables are variable in PHP page to page, the page which they've been submitted to. So you don't have such things in PHP as global variables, but we're going to talk about tonight how what you can use is what's called session variables, which allow you to do carry over content from page to page. The variables that you do have available, though, to you outside of session variables, I'm going to talk about tonight, are two super global arrays created in PHP. And again, these are just for the page itself, post and get. Okay, coming in, you submitted a form to a page, you're going to use a post command. You submitted a form to a page, you use the get command. So whenever you're emailing or submitting a form, again, the two form actions can be either get, which in this case, it's getting information and plugging in the email address from a URL from a form. A warning, never trust user input. Always check and validate user input. And we'll talk about validation, I believe, next week or week after next on reg expressions. And there's validation keys you can use to determine if a string is actually an email. It has certain validation checks it has to pass, meaning it has a name, has an @ symbol, has a domain, has a dot, and then has two or three extensions after that. Okay, and so there's validation we can do for that. Validation tip: storing validated data in a different array to the original useful. And so basically what that means is copying an array to keep it throughout your life cycle of the app. Often name this array clean or something variable, similar intuitive, so something that's actually a clean array that you can use. Then only work with the data in clean and never refer to it as post or get. Okay, because generally your post or get, you're going to do at the top of your page and then use it throughout that page, and that's it. You're going to take post and plug it into some variable name, say first name, last name, email, whatever. Last week, I believe it was first name, last name, and that was it. So this example here plugs in, creates an array called clean. It gets a post called username from a form, and notice it uses that information and plugs it into a variable called clean throughout. So initialize the array, inspect the username to make sure it's alphanumeric. If it is, store it in an array. So is it submitted? We also need to check before accessing data to see if it's been submitted. You can use what's called the isSet command. The isSet command will say, does that set post exist? If it does exist, you can perform the validation. If it doesn't exist, the post doesn't exist. It didn't work. Didn't come over correctly. So that's that one. The next one I want to show is the next document on maintaining state. This is really important. So again, so far we've done pass by reference variable. The URL, $ equals, or not $, question mark equals, variable name, and then value. So we have here maintaining state in PHP. We're going to look at sessions here and how they work, and then we're going to play with the code for the end class. So two ways you can store data. You're familiar with cookies, right? Limited storage space. Should it be secure stuff though on cookies? Probably not, right? Probably would want to store passwords into cookies. Cookies are very insecure and they're user controlled. Sessions are practically unlimited space available for, unlike cookies. Cookies, you have a space in the computer, and browser specifically for how much space cookies can have on a browser, how large it can be. Sessions, reasonably secure, stored on the server side only. So when you do create a session, it is stored on the server itself, not on the browser or the local PC or local memory. Sessions have no user control whatsoever. Cookies you can delete as a user. Cookies you can say, I want to limit space more. Cookies are insecure, meaning anybody can get a cookie and send it and open it up and look at that cookie. But you can't do such thing with a session. So how do sessions work? I'm glad you asked. They're based on assigning each user a unique number or session ID. Even for extreme heavy use sites, this number can be practical for all purposes and unique. All right? So an example, that number there, that alphanumeric. Okay? You've seen these type of numbers probably in banking sessions or any type of secure session site. You wonder what it's all about. It's a session given to you for that session, and then it dies at the end of that session. And in the midst of that session, a lot of, well, like banking websites will have secure encryption of the session encryption data, to where it's all encrypted as well. So that's just an example of a key that you could use. The session ID is stored in a cookie or passed in a URL between pages while the user browses. The data to be stored, like the name, login, state, whatever, it is secured only on the server, not on a cookie. Okay, so in the cookie, all you would have is the actual session ID itself, but have no content. It would just be the alphanumeric number. It's a pointer, basically. It has no data in it whatsoever. That makes sense? Kind of like a key. The data to be stored, again, is on the server side and referenced using the session ID, whatever that session ID is. Crucial, sessions are easy to be implemented as PHP does all the work. Very easy to use. So to start a session variable, you have to use what's called session start. It tells PHP, we're getting ready to start into a session for this application. An example would be you log onto a CMS site like we're going to do in a second with the username admin, password admin. It carries throughout every page the word admin, the username admin. Okay? Does not carry the password, but it does carry the username. Or in some websites they do like aliases, right? Aliases that'll carry over just fine. That way when it goes to a page it says, okay, does this session exist, number one? If it does exist, then we're going to let this site in. We're going to let this page in, or this person into this page. If it doesn't exist, we're going to redirect it back to the index. That's the whole purpose of sessions, for a secure site anyway. And so what I'm going to show you tonight is how you can easily create secure pages with just a few lines of code by checking to see if the sessions variables exist. If they don't exist, it redirects back to the login page, basically. So PHP does all the work. It looks for valid session IDs in the cookie or get super globals. If it finds that data or finds that session, it initializes the data. If none's found, a new session ID is created. Set cookie. This function must be called before any echoed output to the browser. And we're not going to do cookies this week, but we do cookies here. I believe next week actually we do cookies. So cookies are actually weird though because some browsers all deal with cookies differently on what they'll allow you to store and what they won't allow you to store. When doing anything with sessions, it's always called first, session start. I mentioned that earlier. So here's an example of session data initialization. So we have here the $_session in all caps. That way it kind of demarks it from all your other variable names. Like I told you the first week in here, I always do variable names all lowercase. Reserved variable names, I always do uppercase. So session is one example here that you could do all uppercase. And so you have the session super global, can be stored by using this example here, session name, single quotes, equals name. What this is doing is creating a session variable called name, the contents of name, whatever's in name. Okay. So second session variable age with the contents of age, the variable age. So now these two are actually ready to be used in your application on any page that you go to, that you use this application on, whatever server it's hosted on. To read that data, it's real simple. So on the next page, you want to read it. You have your variable declaration equals session, and then the name of that session. That's it. Now it is case sensitive, so make sure you keep a running total of your sessions if you have a lot of them in your site, or keep it simple to where it's easy to remember. The way I generally do it is when I create a session on a page, I automatically go to the page I'm going to use it and read it immediately, so I won't forget that step. Okay, so all you need to remember is naming syntax, which is the same on everything you've learned so far in PHP, very syntax related. Sessions need to pass the session ID between pages as a user browses and tracks the session. It can do this in two ways: cookie propagation and URL propagation. So, talk about the first one, cookie propagation. Cookie is stored on the user's PC containing the session ID. It reads whether the session start has begun. It calls and initializes it. The default behavior is a cookie that expires when the browser is closed. Cookie properties are called by that right there, session set cookie params. And you can put parameters of time spans of cookies from seconds to days to months to years to infinity. Okay? And so generally you're going to put some type of time stamp on a cookie for life cycle. Also, too, just so you know, some browsers will only allow cookies to live so long as well. So regardless of what you put in your code, it could actually kill it because of the browser rules. URL propagation of a session. Here's an example of a session ID propagated by URL. You notice the question mark at the end of PHP, and then the SID, the session ID equals, and then that long, hairy alphanumeric string. PHP provides a global constant to append that session ID to any internal links, and it's called SID. So which one? The default setup of PHP uses both methods. It checks whether the cookie is being used and enabled. It also checks if URL propagation. If cookies are on, it says PHP uses cookie propagation. If cookies are off, it uses URL propagation. What this means for developers is that we must be aware that sessions can be propagated through a URL. It can append that SID to any internal links. If sessions are propagated by cookies, the constant SID is empty string, so the session ID is not passed twice. Now, I'm not going to show you SIDs. In fact, we're going to use session variables. You do not have to use SIDs, and you do not have to use cookies either. It uses the actual PHP engine to store the sessions within the actual app. Okay? So that's what we're going to do in a second. We've got a few more slides here, though. So say we're through with this cookie, though. We're through with the session. And an example would be what? What would be an example on a website when you're through with the session? What's the user just done? Closed out. What else could he have done or she have done to before we do a session destroy? Anything? Logging out, right? Logging out of your bank account. So after you log out, it successfully destroys all sessions by the session equals array, clearing it, and then notice here, deletes any session cookies that might be there, sees if the cookie sessions are available. If not, if it is, then it sets that cookie and destroys it. Then the one I use and we'll be using this semester is a session destroy variable. The session destroy destroys any sessions. So if you have 10 sessions in your app, it destroys all of them, all 10. That way, if you log out, it destroys sessions. And if the user was to go hit the back button, say you were on a members page, when they log out and you do a session destroy, if they hit the back button, wouldn't be able to go there because the session's destroyed. All right. Also, to put back to reusing that as a header information here where you can basically post to your self page, do a page self post. And then lastly, we'll end on this one on session expiry times. After a certain length of time, the default's 1440 seconds. The PHP garbage collection deletes session variables. It's important as most sessions will not be explicitly destroyed. If propagated by cookies, the default is set to set a cookie that is destroyed when the browser is closed. If URL propagations used, like in banking sites, the session ID is lost as soon as they navigate from that website. So if you go back, if you're on a banking website, if this doesn't work this way, you need to change banks. If you're on a banking website and you go back and then come back to the page, it shouldn't let you back in. You should have to re-authenticate. Okay? It should, if it's doing anything right. And that's URL propagation for the SID. So let's look at, real quick, again, or let's look at the code, actually. I'm going to look at the code that we're going to be playing with here tonight. So we've got all this code here that I had you download for week 4. I'm going to go and open all this up into Text Wrangler. There's not a lot of code in here. It's a lot of files, but there's not a lot of code. Okay? So let's start out with the index page. All right? And let me blow this up for you. Okay, so this first one, if you notice the first 3 lines of code, remember I told you earlier, I'm going to quickly show you ways to secure a website, any website with 3 lines of code. Remember? That's the 3 lines of code right there. Beginning PHP tag, include statement for a code called a page called phpbox.php, and an end PHP tag. That's it. If that's on any page, it will secure that page if you want it to be secure. All right? Or if you want it to be utilized. PHP box, 3 lines of code. Now I'm going to pull up another one though. That just initializes the actual box or the login page we'll look at in a second. But I know for sure I'm securing the members site. The members site or the members.php page, you'll notice different though on the declaration of code, the line of code. This one, it's 3 lines of code, but notice it's using, instead of the PHP box, it's using the login success.php. And what that one is meaning if they were to type in explicitly a hard URL to that code, to that file on the website, it would redirect them back to the index page. They shouldn't be able to get in there. So let's look at both in just a second. First, on the index page, PHP box, and then a simple website, header, title, 3 links. The links go to index, about, and members, and that's it. So let's look at the PHP box. PHP box is a login, simple login interface for the user to log in to the site. Nothing more, nothing less. So what we're doing here, we talked about earlier already, the session. In order to start a session, you have to do a session start. Session start, then the next line is what could be used for relocation to the index. Here, it's taking the page, whatever page it is that it's on. In this case, it's going to be index, always on the home page. And it's going to take index and plug it into the session page. All right. Next, it says if not set session username, it's going to go to the main login page. Meaning, if the session called my username is not set, it's going to go to the main login page. If it is set, meaning it exists, it's going to go to the login success page. So we have an if path, true path, and we have a false path. All right. So let's look at the if path first, the true path. My username. The only way it could be done is if they've logged in successfully to be created. So we'll say false. This is going to be false initially because we know we've not logged into this yet. So it's going to go to the main login.php page. So let's go there. And let me blow that up a little bit. Okay, this one jumps right into a post form. It's going to go to a checklogin.php page we'll look at in a second. And it just has simply in here, member login, username, password, and a button, submit button. The username has a name, my username, password, my password, and I do buy it, and then submit button, and that's it. So if I look at the actual code for this one, let's go there real quick. Emma. Okay, so here's the member site. So here's the username and password and login, or they can register. This is for register for a username as well. But I know this one's already created one here earlier. Just admin, click login, and now admin, you have logged in successfully, log out, and then it shows you 3 pages. And they have access to admin, about, and even members page. Members page is the only page that is secured. The about and the home page could be accessed whether or not they're logged in or not. So let's go back to the code. So the little box here, or the main login.php page, that is actually, when this refreshes, I'll show you, that's actually this right here. This whole section right here is the main login. It's pointing that in. Username, password, that's it. And button to submit it. Okay. So let's go back to the index page. Or take it back, the box page, PHP box page. So they say they logged in successfully. As soon as they log in successfully, then it's going to actually go back and rerun this PHP box again. At this time, it's going to go to login success. Let's look at the login success page and see what it looks like. Okay, the login success page says if session, first test it says if session is set, meaning there's a session started somewhere in the site. If it's not started, it's going to run a session start. Okay, then it's going to check to see if my username is a session. If it's not a session, it's going to redirect to index page. If it is a session, it's going to echo that username and then kick out some HTML that says user, whatever your username is, comma, you've logged in successfully, then a link, a hyperlink back to logout.php. All right. Now, if we look back at the page I just came from, which was the main login, we'll see where that session variable was created, because it's a post command to check login.php right here. If you look up here on the overhead, we're posting it to check login.php. If I go to check login.php, what it's doing is getting that post information, checking against a database that user exists. So here we go. The first thing it's doing is it's turning on what's called buffering. So no output at all will be stored to the browser. It'll all be stored locally to the server. Session start, we've already went over. What's this file doing from last week? Remember what that one's doing? Yep, it's connecting to the MySQL database. It has a variable here for table called members. Then it's going to post from the form username and password. It's also going to post here the page it's coming from. And I believe on the index page it's index. It's going to be posting it from. Then to protect MySQL injection, which hackers use a lot for PHP websites, you do what's called strip slashes in parentheses, the variable names that you're bringing over from your form. And what it's going to do is it'll strip any HTML code that's in that URL brought over, because sometimes hackers will do what's called SQL injection to try to get into databases by putting SQL strings in the actual URL to a file name to inject it to bypass security, to bypass the database basically. And so this will strip any type of SQL or HTML commands from the string, these just by using strip slashes. There's actually a URL I put below in the code example that explains more on real escape strings. Real escape strings is the next one, which basically takes and strips any type of escaping strings, meaning enter keys, space keys, tab keys, gets rid of that out of my password or my username. Then finally we're ready to do a select statement. So we're selecting all from table name, in this case the table name is members, where members underscore username equals my username. We're doing the query results here, one of MySQL query results. The next line is we're counting the results, how many rows. If it equals to 1, which it should be on your member site, you should only have one user with that username. If it's equal to 1, then it registers those 2 sessions, my username and password, and it puts in the header whatever page that they're currently on. Else, it says wrong username and password, all right? And then it turns off the buffering, all right? So that's the check login. We'll say it successfully checked it in. If it's successfully checked in those users, or that user, when it comes back to this, my username is going to exist, so login success is going to work. So if I go back to the website, I'm going to put in something I know is incorrect. Log in. Wrong username and password. Okay? Go back. Put something I know is correct. And then, remember, this page here that you're looking at, this insert, is inserting it into the index.php page. And it's inserting it right here at the very top line of code. This PHP box is before, you'll notice, homepage, about, and members page down here. Okay, so it's being included. That PHP box is being included. So when I log in, PHP box is still there when I log in successfully, and I'm still on index.php. The only difference is it's changed from the main login PHP page to login success. And remember, login success just has hello, or the username, comma, you've logged in successfully, just like this right here. All right. When they click the logout button, they click that, it goes to the logout page and destroys a session. So let's look at that. This one goes to logout.php. Yes?
Okay, so I thought I read in Chapter 2 somewhere that session start has to be the very first thing that happens.
Yes.
So in your site, if I'm understanding this correctly, you are including PHP box, or I'm sorry, you're including main login, you have PHP box, but you have some HTML before that home practice and labs.
Yeah, the PHP box will actually have in it, on the PHP box, it'll actually have in it your session start on the PHP box page itself. Now I do a trick though too, because sometimes if you try to do session starts too many times in your code, it'll cause an error on some browsers. So I'll show you what I do on that. Try to go back to the smaller code. Went too large.
So session start doesn't necessarily have to be before any other HTML?
No, it doesn't. No, just before you use, before the PHP.
Before PHP? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. It's got to be before PHP, correct.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, definitely. And why is this taking forever? Okay. There you go. Okay. So in the PHP box, you've got session start always is fired on the PHP box. But you'll notice, though, on the login success, I do an if statement. I say, okay, is there any sessions at all available right now? Okay? Is there anything available? And if there's not anything available, it starts a session, because in order for me to test a session, it's got to be started. And so that's why I put that if statement there. Because say they were to go to, for instance, a members page, which that's the only one that's secure on the whole site, it's going to go to the login success page, all right? And the login success page will always redirect to index. If my username is not set, it'll always redirect to index, all right? So that's why if I go up here and manually, after I've logged off, type in members in the URL, and I've not logged in, make sure it's the right one. Yeah, it's going to redirect back to index immediately. And so it is using sessions, but it's testing to see if it's using session start, but it's only testing to see if it exists first for it. You don't want session start, if that makes sense in your app. Okay, now let's go back to the logout one. The logout page, remember we talked about earlier on the session start, session destroy scenario when you use session destroy. Okay, and logout is a perfect example because, okay, they've hit the logout link. Well, before you do a session start, you have to do a session destroy. Or before you do session destroy, you have to do session start. So I'm doing a session start, session destroy, right in a row, done. Then it's going to do a refresh for 3 seconds and go back to the index page. While it's sitting there, though, it's going to have, you've logged out successfully, and the message of the body and successfully logged out here. Okay? So if I wanted to apply real quickly that security to any other page, let me change it from just members to say I wanted to put it to about. Okay? So I'm gonna put it on about now. So right now if I click on about page, it lets me go there. Okay, so let me go ahead and save that file. Okay, and go back to the main page. Oh, I'm not on local. I'm on external. Let's go to local. Okay, we're doing lab week 4. Okay, there we go. The local one looks better than external anyway. And so I've secured the about page, but I'll hover over here. I'm going to try to click on about. It lets me go there. And let's make sure I've got the right file. I'm on the class one, class week 4. Okay, there we go. There we go. So when I click on about, it doesn't let me go to about. I can't physically click on it or type it in. It's always going to redirect. And so what's cool about that, unlike any other language that you will find as far as programming language goes, PHP is the simplest language to secure any website easily. So this could be a basic HTML site that you have where you have PHP built as just a wrapper for security. Does that make sense? And the wrapper for security, you would have 2 files needed actually, or 3 files. A PHP box needed for that to work. You'd also need PHP box, login success, log out, and check login as far as the PHP files, code-wise itself, for it to work. So with those 4 files, you could basically secure any website that you want. And one of the things the external site has on week 4 that this one doesn't have, and we don't do it to actually week 10, is a registration link. So this is the one you guys have actually to download. I uploaded tonight. This is a correct one. And right now, I've actually have, if I go in here and click admin to log in, you'll notice here it says on the MySQL connection that username and password is wrong, okay? And more than likely it's wrong. If I go over here to my cconsul, I don't even see the members site here at all. So I do have a file in here, I believe. Let's go there. Yeah, create members. See that one? Create members. We talked about this last week. Every PHP developer has 2 options to create tables. The first option is what? We talked about that last week. What's the first option? To create a simple table for your app. What can you do? One of the ways you can do it. Just name one. Yeah, PHP admin, like we talked about last week, you could do it. Or the way I do it, which is old school, but it's a lot of PHP programmers still do it this way, is that you just have multiple files of creation for data tables. That way, if I move this app to another server 5 years down the road, I've got that code to create those tables for that server, right? It's not depending upon that PHP myadmin database. So I have the code. All I need to point to is change the config file to whatever the new server is, and I'm good. It'll create the table I need. In this case, it's members. And notice on this one, it's creating a members table with a members ID, integer, that can't be null, auto increment. Members username, varchar32, can't be null. It's unique. Password, varchar32, not null. Fname, lname, email, and phone can all be null. And they're varchar32 and 50 and 12. But the primary key in this one's members ID. But after it creates this table, and it's only going to be used once, by the way, I didn't mention that. The include once means it only uses it once. It's only used for one purpose, for one-time creation. After it creates a table, it comes down here and actually inserts into members a username with admin and a password admin. Then, if it does exist, it'll come to this die statement, which will say, hey, admin user's already been added, ready to log in. All right? Means if you were to run this twice, which you normally wouldn't even have this in a directory once it's been run the first time, it'll be deleted out of it. And so the first time, though, you would definitely have it in there to create the database. So I'll go ahead and run it real quick here. This is from the browser, create members. So let's go there real quick. Wrong one. I'm going to close out the stuff I don't need. See you later. And class 4, and I want create members. Admin user's already been added to the database. Let's go back. And I want to check my PHP myadmin because I didn't think I saw it in there. cconcle members. But let me look at my config file. In fact, I think the config file that's being used for this one is the one directory back. Yeah. Which is this one right here, which that's why it's not using it. So, what I will do is, just to be simple here, I'm just going to, well, yeah, I'll just change the code. It's in the actual same directory. We'll do it in the same directory. So I'm changing it to be in that same directory for any config file, which you can do whenever you have multiple databases in your app. Make sure there's nothing else here. Members, we're good there. PHP box, good there. And then do a save all. Okay, now it's tried. That was I think that was my config for my external, look like. There we go. So members has been created, members database. Now let's go back and check my PHP myadmin just to make sure. There it is, members. And notice one record's been created, admin, right? So it's been created now. Now we can go ahead and test this again. Week 4. Now we should be able to type in admin, and this does not have asterisks in it, but we're just doing it for testing anyway. So now we're now logged in successfully. I can now successfully go to about.php and members.php. Home is open all the time. It says admin, comma, you have logged in successfully. Now I'm going to click logged out. It's going to render for 3 seconds, kill all sessions. Now if I click on about, it stays on index. If I click on members, it stays on index. Make sense? So recapping on files needed, config file. Boom. Make sure when you do your config file, you've got your database created first. If you in the course, I do have in the modules, I believe at the very top in the documents section, a video on uploading to external host. But the other one I have, believe it was in last week's practice lab. Yeah, this one right here. Practice lab from last week goes over creation of your database in PHP by admin. Watch that if you need to watch that on creation. It's pretty simple to do though. Basically walking through how to create a user. I have a Mac, so mine's operations, or let's take it back. Mine is not operations. Go back home. Mine's privileges. On users for Windows machines, it's users, if I'm not mistaken. For XAMPP, is that correct? Was it users? Is that correct? So users for Windows folks, privileges for Mac. And then these over here are just other databases I use in development. So you need the config file created from, and we did last week, first initial last name, create a username, cconcle, has all privileges. During the process of creating a username, though, it gives you the ability to add in create a database of that same name. It's just a simple checkbox right here. Create database with same name and I'll grant all privileges. Once you do that, you have a database with your name, and then for development purposes, I just do my name, username, my name, password, my name, and that's easy. And then you can change it externally later. So you've got to have your config file created, and that's in the zip for this week download. And most websites will use config file, one config file for the entire site, because maybe they're connecting to the same database, and the database will just have different tables. Okay, you know, hundreds and hundreds of tables in there. So you've got the database host, local host for your development. If you're on 00 web host, it's going to be an external URL for the local host, for the DB host. Then your DB name, username, password. It does a connection, grabs onto that database at last, and then you're ready to use it for SQL table creation, insert, update, deletions. So you need config. You also need the PHP box, which includes a check for the box of the website, which looks like this here. So this box over here on the right is PHP box, member login, username, password, login. So that's what it should look like if you use that exact code. And then over here I've got my home page, about page, and members page. Then you also have the main login and login success. Main login is the one where the users get to type in the username and password right here. And then once they've logged in successfully, it's the shorter box. It gets rid of the box here on the right, and it puts it up here on the left with the username, comma, you've logged in successfully. And then finally, when they're ready to log out, you got the logout.php. And the one I forgot was the check login. Check login is actually used as a post form for the main login. Main login does a check login post action for that to check to make sure that user does exist. So you've got config, check login, login success, log out, main login, and PHP box. Anytime you want to secure a page with those pages, basically all you have to do is the 3 lines of code and including the login success. I did that on the about and I did it on the members. Okay? And so those 3 lines of code would secure, like I said, any website. Doesn't have to be a PHP site. It could be any website you want to secure with this logic. And I have used this a lot in a lot of websites that need secure access for certain pages or whatever. It's easy to implement. It can be implemented on any website. It has to have a PHP server on site, but besides that, that can be freely downloaded and installed. If they don't want to use a commercial product like Magenta, which a lot of companies use for PHP platform, you can actually download and use, which I have used in shops, XAMPP and smaller shops for internet type purposes. It works fine. There are steps in XAMPP, by the way, to where you can secure it to where external folks can't get in and log in. The other one is you can actually just install a full Apache onto a server. Macs have it built in. If you have a Mac server, it's already built in. Just turn it on, and you've got an Apache server ready. And there's a lot of websites that use Macs as the actual backbone for the server. And the second will be Linux. Windows isn't used too often for PHP servers. It's usually a Mac or Linux box because it's just native to the system, really, built in. Mac is built in. Linux is built in as well. Most of the Linux distros like Red Hat, which is the most popular one, actually has built-in Apache into the actual OS. You just turn it on and use it. And so Windows use 2S, which is for Microsoft stuff, for ASP.NET, which I do develop in that as well. But the sites I develop in ASP.NET compared to the sites I develop in PHP is about 90% PHP, 10% Microsoft. Microsoft sites aren't too popular anymore. They used to be. They were getting there, but I think what killed them was whenever they went to, they tried to replace Flash with Silverlight, I think is what it is, Silverlight. Silverlight's Microsoft's version of Flash, you might have heard of. In fact, you can go to some websites that actually still need the Silverlight plug-in. It works pretty good, but they were kind of like a day late, dollar short type thing. But they spent a lot of money on Silverlight and a lot of research and didn't really go over. In fact, Adobe, they almost went under in parts of their company because of Flash, because they wouldn't go on the bandwagon of HTML5 and jQuery and JavaScript, and they wouldn't do it, so they're paying for it a little bit now. But all these companies, Adobe, Microsoft, Apple, all support, right now anyway, HTML5 and jQuery, which is those are the number one Flash-enabled type of websites. And so, but CMS sites, all your CMS sites you guys go to for management, Facebook, WordPress, those are the 2 most popular right now as far as job types, sites. Facebook's in every known commercial site has a Facebook plugin, every one of them. Same with WordPress, though. Every known commercial site has some type of WordPress functionality in that site somewhere, usually. What I mean by commercial, like any commercial site you go to, like Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, they all going to have some type of components to WordPress somewhere in their site. And I mentioned this already, but WordPress is probably the number one for PHP developers. That's your bread and butter. WordPress is not going anywhere either. And so next summer I'm thinking about offering an 8-week course in WordPress, because as it pertains to PHP, because anybody can install WordPress and use it, but creating modules for it out of the box is a little tricky. And so I thought about, I've had some students ask me about doing like an 8-week class. I haven't taught summer in like 5 years. My wife probably kill me. But I think I could do it online, actually. Wouldn't have to come on campus. We could do it online. And would any of you guys be interested in that? Summer WordPress course on PHP development? It basically just, it'd be 8 weeks of each week having like 2 to 3 really cool modules that you learn how to create to plug into WordPress. And then you could use those examples to create whatever you want to in WordPress, basically. So, oh yeah, well, Zuma I used for years actually before WordPress came about. Yeah. How long has it been since you've worked with WordPress though?
WordPress, like 2.4.
Yeah, it's totally, it's like it's kind of like comparing I don't know, I used to have a Ford Maverick years ago when I was 16, an orange Ford Maverick when I was 16 years old. Yeah, it had no heater in it, and but I kept it. I was nice to it. I kept it clean. It was even rust spots. I kept it clean. But anyway, it's kind of comparing a Maverick to like I don't know, an electric Tesla or something today. I mean, just it's light years. Joomla's still around. I think where Joomla lost out is they didn't keep up with the market share on what people were wanting, whereas WordPress did, in meaning that Joomla's kind of closed in some of their source control, and WordPress is like, no, everybody just do whatever you want to. Now, granted, you do have like the WordPress.com and the WordPress.org, but they're constantly getting fed from developers all the time for new tools and stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I developed 2 or 3 websites here in town with Joomla years, like 6, 7 years ago, and I really liked it. But it just, they stopped kind of, well, I knew there was going to be a problem. They stopped, with the newest version of PHP that came out, they stopped having that in their development platform. When that happens, usually, the development process is slowing down in that environment when they don't have the newest and greatest PHP examples for you. So, well, but that's just a little tip. But WordPress isn't going anywhere. And so this week's lab, hopefully it helps you in understanding really sessions and security, which I think sessions, in my mind, the way I use it in PHP is excellent for security. It's excellent for security and logging in, logging out. Not really secure data, just logging in security for pages. Logging security for pages really is how I use it a lot. So your take home, I did put in that zip file, guys, the correct stuff, but you also have in there the array one as well, it looks like. So let me show you that real quick before we wrap it up here. I did put in, let me see here. The one I uploaded to you guys, week 4, has 2 files. The index file is an array file. Don't mess with that one. You don't need to do it. The time one is the one that I want you to play with, which is taking the existing code that I give you, and let's do this. Add in, say, 3 or 4 other sets of time stamps or time ranges and 3 or 4 new messages. And so you're going to have 3 or 4 more if statements. And also you can play around with, let's do this, have you guys select one other time zone besides America, Chicago, I don't care what it is, and if you just Google that date default time zone set, the very first page you'll come to is a PHP.net reference that gives you a list of all the different locations you can set it to. Does that sound good? So that's your challenge basically, is to take this different time set. Let's add 3 more selections, 3 more timestamp selections, time range selections, and 3 more messages. To test this, all you have to do is change the time on your computer to test to make sure it's working correctly for your messages. Then lastly, the PHP online thing I showed you, I would recommend you, I think if you used it and set it up, you would like never do FTP again actually. I've had students tell me that, then use it last semester. And I don't usually throw it at students till around this time of the semester just to save confusion. But on the link to our announcements, you go to our announcements, and you go to the free online PHP IDE, and I believe I emailed it to you guys as well. This guy is a PHP developer. He's done a lot of cool stuff. This is probably the coolest he's done. Is basically be able to develop from the ground up, and from any web browser anyway, PHP code, and it has syntax, colors and everything in the actual code when you develop it. But let me show you here what he's given us. Okay, right now we have the free one is actually you get one project. That means one server you can be connected to, which for this semester that's all you're going to use anyway. But while you're a student, while you have a .edu, in fact, he told me when you set this up, if you actually change the username to something else before you end as a student, change your email, you'll still keep the same service. Because I emailed him, like when I email him, he emails me right back. And this guy's like in British Columbia. But anyway, this is actually, it's a $60 a year platform. We're getting five projects, which is more than enough for students. That's 5 websites basically, at no cost. Yeah, this, he says, if you click on this and just register with your .edu email, it'll automatically put you into that 5 project platform, even though it doesn't show that on the site. The education one is 5 projects available. And then you just simply bring up your 00 web host FTP screen, go and set up the page once you log in. And this guy, if you have any issues, by the way, if you have any issues on logging in or whatever, there is a email support site on his link on his site. I've never emailed him and not got a response within like 5 minutes, literally, in the last 3 years. Never. Yeah, Adam. He's a great guy. Yeah, immediate. I mean, he's like in his hip pocket. Yeah, he's got it on his phone. He's got to just walk around all the time. But he does make pretty good. He's got a lot of clients on it, so he keeps it up pretty good. But look at all the code technology it supports. He actually added in here recently HTML Ruby, and then also he added in here shell command, and then Cold Fusion. That's been in there a while. But the syntax is beautiful on this as far as the environment for PHP developers, students in particular, because as soon as you click on any one of these files, I mean, it puts a color coding, syntax, IntelliSense, everything's in here, built into the browser. It does work best, I found, in Firefox. I have used it in Chrome, but it seems to work better in Firefox. But you're literally editing on the fly, and so you're doing it right there. So, and the other thing I like about it is, if you do develop something locally, you can right-click on your public HTML, and you can upload an entire folder at one time. So that's nice as well. So yeah, try it out. Tell me what you think. You guys can use it after this semester too, which is great. So use it. It'll be easier, I think. And what's great about it is if you think about it for just a second, you don't have to have XAMPP, if you think about it in a way. Because I have students do this last semester. They actually, when they started using this, they stopped using XAMPP because they literally use this in place of XAMPP because you can actually run code locally from this website, and it runs in a PHP environment. There's like an install of a little script you have to run on your machine, a JavaScript, and it runs a Java applet, which installs like a little mini server. And so you can actually develop stuff locally, or you can actually have a separate environment just for test. And then when you're ready to bring it over to live, you just drag the file over into the folder and you're done. So yeah, try it out, see what you think. If you have any questions or whatever, again, you can email him. He's very prompt in his response. And we are done. One announcement as far as things going on this week on campus. We do have Friday, Apple is coming on campus from 10 to noon. It's going to be in rooms 117 117, 119, 121. They're going to be presenting new apps for iPad. Then they're also going to be presenting new textbook technology that Apple's using called Touchbook. Specifically, they've been focusing on K through 12 up to about 2 years ago, but they're now focusing on college level textbooks and, pertaining to you guys, reference books, where you can actually, you yourself as a developer can develop your own textbook or your own reference book for your own projects or your own whatever. You can create your own textbook basically and your own reference book. Yeah, anybody can download the app to do it. It's called iAuthor, and you can download it. So you're going to talk about that and show some examples. But this guy's a system engineer with Apple, Jason Bruder, and he's going to be coming 10 to noon Friday. So if you go to myrbc.org or our Facebook page on CIS, our CIS Facebook page, which I know a lot of you guys like already, there's a registration link there. Okay? All right, we're done. If you have any questions, come see me.